I've been asked a lot about how I play alongside a Sledgehammer main and win consistently enough for both of us to secure Ruby. And at first I never really questioned it because I didn't realize until recently that I've been playing with, as far as I'm aware, the only Sledge player in the game to secure Ruby after the massive Sledgehammer nerfs at the start of Season 6. Most Sledge players after this nerf completely dropped the weapon, and anytime I did see one outside of my stack, it seemed like everyone considered it a throw pick. So I'm here to tell you why it's not a throw pick and answer how we made it work. Keep in mind that this is not a Sledgehammer guide, although I will somewhat explain how to play it, but rather this is a team guide on how to make it work as a group, with the Sledge being the center of the strategy. Overall, what we came to understand is that for Sledgehammer to work at its full capacity, it takes a team-wide effort, whereas in the past, I don't know if that was necessarily the case. This may sound like Sledge is a detriment to the team, and with a poorly coordinated team, it honestly can be, but it more than makes up for it under the right conditions. And what I consider the most important of these conditions is high levels of trust amongst the team to create effective team play, with other conditions involving a shift in playstyle and loadout choices. Without the trust between your squad mates, Sledge becomes a solo killing machine, which just doesn't work against Ruby level players. And if you want to be Ruby yourself, you need to be capable of competing with the best players in the lobby. Everyone must play their part to get Sledge within its swinging distance, and back them up when they do get there. This involves the Sledge communicating when they're going in and how, while the others enable the Sledge's push using whatever they have to help the Sledge player cross openings easier, plus keep them alive mid-engagement. And the Sledge player themselves creating literal openings by utilizing the Sledge's destruction. It is very difficult to develop this trust and coordination between your teammates, but once you have it down, the payoff of getting it to work is massive. This is not something that can be easily described in a video format, but I do have plenty of live stream footage that can be watched to get a better understanding. As far as playstyle goes, there's a much different approach to using Sledgehammer than the norm when you know you have a team backing you up, hence why trust is the first and most important condition. With that trust, a Sledgehammer player is no longer that solo killing machine that I described, but rather the player that initiates with high burst damage that is then followed up on by the team. You see, normally, when you're treating the Sledgehammer as a solo weapon, as in not expecting follow-up from your team, you do a lot more right clicks, or the alt fire attacks, since they one-shot lights and combo well for solo play against mediums and heavies. But when you have a team backing you up, the left clicks end up being the better choice in most cases. This may sound like the Sledge player is intentionally nerfing themselves to allow team play, since the left clicks do less damage and don't combo as smoothly, but it's actually the exact opposite. On paper, the best Sledgehammer combos are as shown here, but in reality, this is not the case. It's nice in theory that a light can be one hit by the alt fire, or a medium is one right click and one left click to down, but the truth is, at a certain skill level, you're not going to land right clicks consistently enough for it to be worth doing as often, because players are simply smarter. And the slower speed of the swing makes the attack very easily readable, and therefore more easily dodgeable. Plus, there's also the issue of it not being confirmable after a winch pull, whereas the left clicks are. But that's not all. Not only are the right clicks harder to hit in the ways I described, the left clicks come with another benefit. On top of the left click simply being a quicker swing, it also comes with a superior lunge that allows it to have more range than the right click. So essentially, you're trading the higher damage of the right click for more consistently applicable damage and relying on your teammates to hit for the extra damage the Sledge player is giving up. This change in the Sledge's playstyle is the key to making this work without the Sledge feeling like a throw pick. Keep in mind, there are still times where right clicks are used, even against good players, but the biggest difference between the Sledge player I play with that has hit Ruby and every other Sledge player I've come across is that they're not taking team play into consideration and are mostly opting in for the on-paper ideal combos. Once the Sledge player has this playstyle down pat, it's now up to the other two players to do their part. Outside of what I said earlier about the Sledge's teammates making up for the lost damage from left clicks over right clicks, the main playstyle shift for the other two players is that they have to keep in mind that if a long-range battle takes place, they are already at a 2v3 disadvantage. On a team with 3 guns, usually the play for pushing a long-range battle is to get a pick from range and then collapse on the remaining opponents, or if you can't get a pick, pressure them enough that you can push freely and then collapse on them. There is also a third option that still works with 3 guns, but is even more ideal for a team with a melee player. With the melee player on your team, the first 2 strategies I mentioned for a full range team are technically still possible, and it is sometimes what my team will do if we see an opportunity, but it's not the most optimal. I mean, numbers wise, 3 guns is more than 2 guns, so you shouldn't be winning these types of ranged fights to begin with. And although in reality, it does sometimes work out, it's not something you should be trying to pull off often when you're playing with someone that can't help at all from range. So that just leaves option 3, which is to find a way to push and force your opponents into melee range. I'm going to get a lot more specific with option 3 here, since it's what makes playing with Sledge its most ideal. At the start of a cash-out round, 2 teams are usually fighting over a vault. One team will tap the vault and a fight ensues. Depending on the location of the vault and where your opponents are positioned, my team will fight over it as you normally would, or sometimes we opt out of taking a fight entirely and prioritize the vault plug. This is dependent on a lot of factors, but to sum it up as best I can, it mostly comes down to how possible it is for us to win the fight quickly, because letting a vault fight drag on for too long puts you at a severe disadvantage for the rest of the round, and there's a lot more cases where the fight can drag on when playing alongside a melee player. As the light on the team, I usually communicate the decision to leave the fight if it drags on, or it looks like it will, since I have access to gateways to quickly get us out of the fight if it doesn't look good. The idea behind avoiding the fight at the vault, other than getting the plug first, is that once your team owns an objective, you can now force the enemy team into melee range, since they absolutely have to go for a cashout steal to win. Whereas before the cashout is plugged, an enemy team could choose not to push and keep their ranged advantage. On the opposite side of things, if we end up not getting the initial cashout start and are on the offensive, we still need to force our opponents into melee range. It's really the same concept, except in reverse. If you force or bait a steal, it again forces your opponents into melee range. Most of the time, my team will do bait steals if it seems unlikely that we can force a melee ranged fight without it. And if they don't take the bait, we just get a free steal anyway. The pressure created by starting a steal with a Sledge player on your team, or defending a cashout with a Sledge player on your team, is a type of pressure that not many other weapons can replicate. And not only does it force your enemies into melee range, it also forces them to play differently, since getting close to a Sledgehammer player with a team behind them typically means death. With the playstyle shifts implemented, you now need to pick ideal loadout choices to support this playstyle. The first thing I want to mention is weapon choices for non-Sledge players. Last season my stack ran Sledge with Pike and M11, and to be honest, these were just our preferred weapons at the time, and not much thought was put into why these choices worked at first. Only afterwards, when I was asked how we made it work, did I really think about it. Since our Sledge player was now doing left clicks to confirm more damage, rather than trying to solo kill, we needed ideal weapons to help finish the fights the Sledge started. At the time, the Pike was the perfect weapon for this, because the damage values lined up perfectly with Sledge left clicks. Sledge does 100 damage per left click, and Pike used to do 50 damage per body shot, or 75 per headshot. The significance of these numbers may be lost on you until you think about how much faster it enables the Sledge or the Pike player to finish each other's kills. One body shot from the Pike against any class used to immediately allow Sledge to do one less left click to secure a kill, or on the other side of things, one swing from a Sledgehammer means 2 less Pike shots to finish their kills. This combo would reduce the time to kill for both weapons so much that it made it difficult for anyone caught in melee range to escape. This is an absolutely incredible combo that still can be replicated this season with the repeater or revolver. It's just that the numbers don't line up as neatly as the old Pike numbers. Now there is one downside to using a gun like the Pike, repeater, or revolver in combination with Sledge, and it's that since they are all single fire type weapons with low ammo counts, it is sometimes difficult to land follow-up damage on a Sledge player's target because the shots can get unintentionally blocked by the Sledge player, making your team miss a kill opportunity. And that's where the Light's weapon choice comes into play. Overall, I've found that having 3 burst damage type weapons is not the best. And this goes for more than just a Sledgehammer team comp. What ends up happening when you have 3 burst weapons is that a lot of your opponents will end up being left with very little health and no one can finish them. Because unfortunately the delay between shots of single fire burst weapons, or the delay between swings of a melee burst weapon, means it's difficult to finish those low health targets. So as the other player on the team, if the rest of your team is running burst weapons, it makes more sense to round out the comp by using a full auto weapon to finish off any kills that your teammates couldn't. And with a heavy melee player on your team, this is twice as important since they will likely end up blocking a lot of burst damage. As a light, it works out well for you to be the one with the full auto, since you'll likely have to chase a low health player down to finish the kill, and obviously light is the best and fastest class for that. Now on to gadget and specialization choices. For the Sledge player, the ideal specialization for this type of team play is Winch Claw. I know there are some players out there that like Goo Gun with Sledge, but Goo Gun is a lot more of a solo Sledge type of specialization, since it'll soak up almost all of everyone else's damage that tries to help you, and if you're doing left clicks and waiting for follow-up, this is just not optimal. As for the other 2 specializations, they just don't have enough synergy with Sledgehammer to be worth attempting. Winch is perfect because it's easy to follow up for the other 2 players, and it allows the Sledge player to confirm at least one left click consistently. The most necessary gadget for any Sledge player is RPG, and this is again because of synergy. This is the best gadget in the game for finishing off a player if no one's there to follow up, which I know is against the playstyle I've been describing, but in a real world match, it still happens. The 100 damage that RPG can do also combos well with the burst guns I mentioned earlier, since it does the exact same damage value as a Sledge left click. Unfortunately, the RPG has to be almost a direct hit to do 100 damage, but that doesn't change the fact that it's still the best gadget for finishing off kills that get out of melee range. Outside of that, on your Sledge loadout, you want to have some form of defensive gadgets that provide cover to help keep yourself alive, since closing the gap or forcing your opponents to push is essentially your win condition. The Sledge player I play with uses barricades and dome shield, but Goo Grenade is also a good substitute for either slot. There are reasons the Sledge I play with uses the gadgets he does, but I don't want to go too in depth. As far as the other two players' loadouts go, it isn't as strict, but there are things you want to be sure to have as to enable your Sledge player to play at their peak. The most important thing to have is some form of healing. Whether that's a healing beam, the H+ infuser, or both, it doesn't matter. But if you're going to have only one, I'd recommend the H+ infuser as the better choice. Be warned, however, that this does mean as the light player, you have to be very aware and play within line of sights of your heavy, or at least close enough that you can get into line of sights before your heavy dies, which is kind of the opposite of most good light players' flank playstyle. And since the H+ infuser can heal from further range than the healing beam, it means the light doesn't have to sacrifice their positioning as much as a medium using heal beam does to help heal the Sledge heavy. Other gadgets you'd want to have are ones that provide more cover for your team, such as Goo Grenade, gadgets that enable your team to close the distance, such as Jump Pad or Gateway, or gadgets that help keep your team alive, such as Defib or Nullifier. There are more options, but this is what my team ran last season. The only change this season is that I now run Nullifier. There are a lot of things that I had to leave out of this guide because it would get too in-depth, such as how we stall our cashouts, or why we choose our specific gadget choices over others that can still work, and they may be topics I cover in future videos, but for now, if you would like to see how this playstyle all comes together, or if you want to ask any questions, you can catch me live on Twitch or here on YouTube. Thanks for watching.